Hello, you guys. So I'm excited today because I have Vicki Dillard here with me, and we're going to have a chance to talk to her, hopefully learn a few things. And in addition to that, we're also going to be able to do a Q&A session in about an hour. For those of you who want to stick around, please make sure that you like the video so that those people who aren't here yet can know that we are live. And also feel free to share so that people can join in on the conversation. So with that said, Vicki.
Yes.
Can you, for those who don't know, just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history and what you're doing currently?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Irene. I enjoy watching some of your content and just think you're a beautiful spirit. So a shout out to you and thank you so much. As you just said, my name is Vicki Dillard and I am a contributor right now on FLyNubianQueen.com or really FLyNubianQueenTV.com, Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And I discuss some political issues, current affairs, and some spiritual issues, especially things that are pertinent to Black people. I have been a longtime activist and deeply involved in the community for a long time. I certainly have an interesting story, the most recent being the time that I did in the belly of the beast in a federal prison as a target, interrelated to a target as an activist. And just some things even now that I'm overcoming physically. So anyway, that's a little bit about me right now.
So I want to ask you exactly what you're doing right now. I think you have something. Is it On Purpose? What is the name of your website?
Yes, On Purpose with Vicky.com. And basically that's my, it's pretty much the same thing as a community organization title, but I'm literally starting all over, starting from scratch. And so basically it's interrelated to the work that I do on the internet in terms of my content creation and social media, in addition to the fact that I'm also a speaker. We also go into nursing homes to speak. And we are regrouping some things right now because I used to go into prisons to speak to women. But obviously, because of my own legal situation from a few years ago, that's presently on hold, but we still have an impact in a different way with those that are in prison. So it's still a community organization, but that's just the easiest way for folks to contact me directly, separate from the FLyNubianQueen brand.
And you're also a member of the Nation of Islam, is that correct?
I am a registered member, yes, ma'am.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how you incorporate your religious beliefs into your activism for the community?
Interesting. You know, I'm fairly new registered member, let me say that, to the Nation of Islam. And so what I say, things that I say and do, I don't speak as a quote unquote former spokesperson, you know, or individual or student minister. So I want to be clear on that. I'm a student. I'm someone that's learning. So I want to be clear about that. So what I do and what I've done for so many years, I was raised, I'm from Mississippi. I live in Colorado presently. So I was always, I was raised in a household by my mother, my maternal grandparents and siblings in a very strong Christian household. And the principles by which I was raised, it wasn't just that they were deacons in the church and teachers in the church and treasurer and pianist and ushers and choir members. My folks really lived the life. They displayed the lifestyle before us. I would see my mother take some of her dollars to buy food for someone that was in prison. And I remember not being tall enough to go up to the upstairs on the elevator to a certain part of the jail that she would go to, and she would give my grandmother, my grandparents, they were older, but I would see them going into nursing homes. I would see them giving. I would see them supporting other people. I would see them giving money. So that is really what informed my activism and the work that I have done for so many years and that I'm revamping to do today. So in terms of what I'm doing on FLyNubianQueen, it seems like it's just a natural progression. You know, I talked about this briefly on the show this week, that I won an honorable mention when I was 11 years old for the Vicky show. And I interviewed my grandfather and my mother. She's so precious. She has the VHS. I am 40 years of age, and my mother has the VHS of provided me with the VHS of me when I was 11 years old on the Vicky show. And so it was really always in me, frankly. And so my goal, the long and short, is to provide, is to inform and to inspire Black people with good content, the long and short of it.
I want to ask you about some issues just surrounding our community. And one of them is this. We're hearing a lot, and I even heard you mention it yourself, with regard to a lot of the things that our brothers mainly are portrayed as doing in the media, some of which we don't know is true yet, some of which we may suspect is true. And you mentioned self-policing within the Black community. And I know there is, you know, a back and forth I've noticed in the past couple of months about if we're capable of doing that. It's something I advocate for too, because there's a belief that within our community, we don't hold each other accountable. I would be of the argument that, you know, the white establishment don't hold their own people to a high level of accountability. So we're no less inept than they are. But can you talk a little bit about your views on self-policing in the Black community, and where you can see the benefits of that being, and in your opinion, at least, as a woman, how you would visualize that looking? I know you talked about, for example, a different sort of punishment is something you always harken back to than we currently have in our penal system under imperialism.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you don't mind here, can I just do a shout out while I talk about this quickly to my Twitter family real quick? It's on right now. So anyway, grace and peace, dear family. I am on YouTube right now with our dear sister, Irene Yvette. Feel free to join us. I'm being interviewed with random questions, and I'm so excited. So hopefully you join us again on YouTube with Irene Yvette. Join us. So to answer your question about self-policing, I have to say I'm definitely informed. I came to this conclusion based on the based on the examples that I've seen exhibited with the Nation of Islam. And I was talking about on the show even this week that there were a group of the men of the Nation of Islam known as the FOI. They are the military arm of the Nation of Islam, FOI, a Fruit of Islam. And some of our dear brothers would go into our communities, Black communities, drug-infested communities, filled, no doubt, with gangbangers and, of course, poverty and all that comes with that. And our brothers were doing it the days that they would go in the street, just a few days a week. But there was a noticeable difference in crime, dramatically decreased. There was a notable difference, of course, with drug use, the respect that our brothers were given. So they thought, what would happen if we were able to do this full time? And that way we would be, be able to see about our people and see a more marked difference in our communities. So we're taught in the Nation of Islam to do for self. The Nation of Islam has been around for almost 90 years, since the 20th century. And so the leader of the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, of course, Minister Farrakhan is his representative, always emphasize do for self, start your own businesses, have your own banks. And that's exactly what the Nation of Islam exemplified then. And it's what they do now. With that being said, that included policing ourselves. Now, let me start by saying this, Miss Irene. We are the mothers and fathers of civilization. What does that mean? That means that we invented the sciences, the mothers and fathers of mathematics, philosophy, education, spirituality, medicine, any and everything that you could possibly, government, any everything that you could possibly think of course, the family set up, the whole nine. It is us. This is a brainchild and a reality of us. I say that because that was what we did then, and it is what we can do now. We're made up of the stuff of greatness. And in fact, the teachings that we come under is that we are indeed gods, and that the black man in particular is God, and that the woman is a god. What does that mean? We're one with force and power. And so if we are truly that, and if the world and civilization got its beginning from us, and if all people came from us, then surely we can police ourselves. But because we have been under our open enemies for over 400 years, we have lost touch with who we are, and we suffer from amnesia. And so with that being said, as we come into a consciousness of who we are, we will less and less become reliant on our open enemies. And that includes self-policing. Now, number one, what's the result of the policing that we're experiencing today? We're dying, we're being murdered, and it's being recorded by our open enemy. When we call the police, our folks, our loved ones, their stories of bloodshed. And that wasn't the intention of the black caller. Is that, you know what I'm saying? So we have to say to ourselves, okay, this is not working. We are capable of holding each other accountable, and holding folk accountable, holding each other accountable does not always mean criminalization. Now, if we go, and if we look at the example of Kemet, some would say Egypt, if we look at the example of the mothers and fathers of civilization and how they did it many years ago, right? Ma'at, the principles of Ma'at, we find that those areas were not filled with prisons. It's a foreign concept. This is a concept that is born primarily, especially the proliferation of prisons and jails and being warehoused, especially as it stands today. This is something that is a brainchild of our open enemy, our oppressors. We don't do, what is the word I'm looking for? Accountability that way. When there is something wrong in our community, the motive must not merely be punitive. It should be restorative. Now, don't get me wrong. If you choose to volunteer to be a repeated and active criminal and offender, then we will deal with you accordingly. But our first instinct is not punitive. The first instinct is to fix this the same way as if there's something the matter with the body. If my leg is bothering me, for example, I have an issue. I don't even always necessarily say the specific illness that was pronounced over me that they say is a lifelong disease, but it's related to one of my organs. And I have so many, side effects, stuff I've had blood clots, hospitalized, and now I'm on blood thinners and all this other stuff, and, stuff going on with my kidneys and my legs. So let me tell you, I thought it was a cramp in my leg just before I was admitted into the hospital a few months ago, right? And I wasn't going to say anything about it because it just felt like a normal, cramp, not me walking on a treadmill or something. And so my mother said, well, when they admit you, because they were calling me to come in anyway for some testing and stuff they were going to do. She said, you need to just tell them about it. So I told them about it, and they said, okay, well, let's just check it out. So of course they checked it out, and they found out it was another blood clot. I had already had one in my kidney. Now I have one in my leg. They didn't chop my leg off, Miss Irene. Are you hearing me? They did not chop off my leg. They did not amputate my leg because I said that I was having an issue with my leg. They did. What is it called that they do on my leg? It was not an MRI. It was something else, not the MRI. What is it when you're learning about the sex of your child?
Oh, an ultrasound?
An ultrasound. That's what they did on my leg. They did an ultrasound and found out that it was another blood clot, right? Why am I saying that? They didn't jump to the most extreme solution, which wouldn't have been no solution at all, which would have been my leg amputated, right? So now I have my leg. I'm addressing the blood clot so that it doesn't turn fatal and go up into my lungs. They, of course, were concerned about it because I've been having repeated blood clots. You understand what I'm saying? So we cannot adopt the way our open enemies do things, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm saying that we merely need to look at the condition of the world to know, as much as we would like to believe, that as intelligent as everybody may seem to be, and economists got PhDs and all of these teachers and all of this kind of, look at the state of the world. You've got your PhDs in economics and finance, but we're in trillions of dollars in debt. You have all these governmental entities and congresspersons and councilpersons, but you can't even keep the government open. The most powerful nation on the planet, you all can't keep your government open, and you can't pay your federal employees. Everybody's got divinity degrees running around here, philosophy degrees, right? But the church, the Catholic Church in particular, is replete with rapists and pedophiles. So I'm just trying to say that the wisdom of the world, the knowledge of the world, the way the world does things is coming to an end. It's an embarrassment. So the idea that we should be focused on an alternative way, which was the original way we did things in the first place before it was co-opted, before it was taken over, we should reconsider that, is simply what I'm saying.
So I want to also, I want to ask you about your feelings on some things that are happening currently in the world. And
okay.
I want to start with the idea of what is Black. So we are seeing this movement that was started by an older brother some time back for descendants of slaves. It's been repackaged as American Descendants of Slaves. And part of the package is reparations for descendants of slaves who are whose ancestors were localized slaves here in the United States of America. And then an offshoot of it is a sort of division between Blacks throughout the diaspora. So I wanted to ask you two questions. One, who is Black to you? What do you define as Black? And two, what are your feelings on unification throughout the diaspora with respect to us being able to identify ourselves by our unique calling? So, for example, Black Jamaican, Black Venezuelan, ADOS. So those would be my two questions. What is Black to you? What do you define as Black? And two, how do you feel we should be divided or unified throughout the diaspora?
Yes, ma'am. I would say, first of all, I'm hanging up my phone when I was inviting our Instagram folks to join us. I would say, first of all, Black. When I say Black, I am speaking interdimensionally. And I don't mean to be super deep, but I'm being honest about, and you're asking me my opinion on that. So I'm speaking interdimensionally. What is that to say? We know that scientists often speak about plasma in the universe. They often, which is that black stuff, they often speak about the black holes. They often speak about that's the stuff that's in between the stuff. Then we're learning that that's the stuff that makes up the other stuff. And so when I say Black, I mean not only color, but it does include color for me. Not only color, but it means the essence from which all things come. And the Black man and the Black woman are the archetype, the original. And so, you know, scientists are telling us that we are made of stardust, right? All this stuff I'm saying is science. This is not just some fantastical stuff. And I think that you would agree, and these are things that folks can find and learn in no limit of time. But they tell us that we're made up of stardust. Well, we're taught and understand and know that we are here. We were here even before the planet. We are literally from outer space. So that's why science is beginning to finally catch up and bear witness to the reality that we're made up of the same stuff of the stars. But that original, that the one that we make a pattern, my mother sews, of course, she has a pattern. That's the pattern, the original, the pattern, how you're going about making everybody else comes from the pattern, is closest to that stuff of outer space, as it were. So for me, black is us. Black is the most heavily melanated, the most heavily pigmented persons on the globe. And so that's black to me. The essence from which all things come as well. It is both for me a physical thing, a melanin thing, and it is also for me a metaphysical thing. And I refuse to separate those two. I also believe that that's also a failure in our progression in the world today, is our inability to connect the dots with the spiritual. When I say metaphysical, that's what I mean. Spiritual stuff, things beyond just planet Earth, beyond just the 3D. Now, in terms of, and I can get a little more practical too, by the way, and maybe you can ask me some other questions about that as well. But you asked me about ADOS, is that right?
Well, not necessarily ADOS, but yes, you can speak to that. But the aspect of it that includes a fragmentation of the diaspora, or even vitriol or negative feelings toward other Black people who are not direct descendants of American slaves.
Yes, I think that it is important that I think we could really simplify this, what's turning out to be seemingly a division with this demand from American descendants of slaves. And I did a lot of work in the courts before I underwent a criminal trial. And I was filing these lawsuits, Miss Irene, myself, against powerful Wall Street banks, powerful legal entities. And in fact, I sued a couple of judges and some other entities without an attorney. And it was because of some of the wrongdoing that I was uncovering. And when you have limited amount of money, and when you were going up against certain entities that I was going up against, some of the attorneys didn't want to put their hands on it. They wanted nothing to do with it. They didn't want to be involved in a court case with some of the folks that I was naming, particularly some of the judges. So I ended up doing this stuff myself, and I represented myself in court in numerous cases, even though I didn't even know all of what I was doing. I studied as much as I could, but I engaged the judiciary, the court systems that I believe to be for the people, by the people, right? And I quickly learned differently by being in those courts. Well, one of the things I learned when I was filing some of these lawsuits as a pro se, or person who's representing themselves, is that you have to have what's called standing. You have to have standing in court. You have to have an actual interest in whatever litigation that you are initiating. And so I think for the ADOS movement, as I understand it, and I'm just learning a little bit more about it, and I don't pretend to know more than what I know. But based on what I have read and some of the commentary that I've heard, I think that the issue is really about who has standing. For example, are you in California? I'm sorry, I don't even know if you tell people that or not. I'm not sure what state you're in.
Yeah, I'm on the West. Yeah,
you're on the West Coast. I'm in the West Coast too. I'm in Colorado. Let me just say this. If I was still in Mississippi in the South, there's a thing called jurisdiction, right? I can't just file a lawsuit, especially if it has something to do with an area related to a county issue, just in any old state. And if I were to file a case, for example, which I've done in federal court means that it involved another party, that's in another state. But even then, they have certain limits and restrictions and qualifications in order to do that. And so the point I'm trying to make in saying all of this is that the ADOS movement, if we can see this as it's just a matter of standing, it's a matter of those that are in a particular jurisdiction. And I think that if we would say we are engaging in a demand for reparations in litigation against the United States of America et al. And others if necessary, but specifically, of course, we're naming the United States of America. And that because we are within the American jurisdiction, because we are geographically here, because our foremothers and forefathers, our bones are buried here, this is why it's specific to us. However, dear family across the globe that are involved in the diaspora, once we get a victory, perhaps this could be the blueprint in the Caribbean, in particular, for example. Perhaps this could be a blueprint for you to get reparations. And so I think that if we would have a more, not just, I'm cutting, this is for us. And if you can't understand that and, blah, blah, I think we should engage it as, hey, it's a simple matter in court in terms of litigation and how things work in the judiciary, in the court of law. There are some very specific things. If you are the one that if you're going to, be considered the one to have interest, you have to be the one that in some way, have been aggrieved and is due something. And that's within any court case, in any matter in the United States. So I think that we should be more sympathetic, more empathetic, but at the same time, show that, hey, this is us doing this in this area. Just consider this to be two different states. This is me doing it here in Colorado, and this is you doing it in Mississippi. You understand what I'm saying? So I think that would help if we did it in that manner, and that we say, hey, our victory here, our victory, perhaps could be, a precedent. Of course, that's a legal term as well. It could be a precedent or a pattern, even a case law, perhaps for you as well in your particular courts of law, that you can begin to engage in your particular nation and land. I think that that's one of the things that we should consider doing.
I'm glad that you said that, because I think that's a nice middle ground. And I love middle grounds, which is that if we limit the fragmentation for legal purposes, but we don't let that extend out into our relationship with each other as Black people on a global level, that is a healthy way to accomplish the means to both ends, which is the maintenance of unity throughout the diaspora globally, because we are oppressed because of our skin. So we have to be unified because of that too, whilst respecting that for these particular moves to be made, we do have to make a difference in these cases. And then we can dispense with any cruelties toward each other and focus on the goal, which is ultimately making them pay, right?
Absolutely. Well said.
So I also have a question for you regarding some moves that are being made. And I don't know if you're aware of them or not, but I'm interested in your thoughts on this. There is a major pushback against white imperialism right now in the world. And I'm curious how you feel about the prospect of what is going on, for example, in Haiti. We've heard that there are mercenaries there. I know on this channel, I showed some footage of them shooting our brothers and sisters unarmed down in the streets of Haiti. And our government is essentially backing this because of the fact that Haiti is in bed with Venezuela, and Venezuela is a current enemy of the establishment and the status quo here in this country. Also, we have the issues going on in South Africa. We have Black First, Land First, one party of many that are trying to fully recapture the land that was taken from them during apartheid. And we are seeing, I don't know if you know this, but in a few weeks, there's going to be a conference of revolutionaries who are pushing back against white imperialism meeting in Venezuela. But we know that our president is sending essentially a killer to the border to try to provoke violence, to throw the country into civil war before this can happen. As Black,
Elliot.
Yes, Elliot, yes. Right, the mass murderer.
Yes.
Provocateur, yes.
Yes.
So my question is, for those of us in the United States, we are in a comfortable place because we essentially are house slaves, if we look at it like that in our positioning. We are being shot down in the street, but not to the degree that is going on in Haiti. We are being enslaved, but not to the degree that some of our other brothers and sisters are. We are being annihilated, but we aren't nearly gone, like, for example, the Aborigines in Australia, who literally only have 700,000 of them left. They were so effective at killing and breeding them out. What can we do? What are some thoughts that you have as ideas of what we can do to be supportive of those efforts of our brothers and sisters globally, and to be as vocal about these issues and where we stand on them as we are about entertainers or sports or, things that are less impactful to us throughout the diaspora?
And shout out to you, Ms. Irene, for even covering these stories, because these are not always subjects and topics that folk will click on and listen to and understand and engage. And in fact, when you begin to talk about international issues, folk will say to you, well, who cares? We need to be focused on what's going on in our own backyard, instead of them seeing the interconnection between us and the globe. And let me say this. One of the things that I love in the nation is we're always challenged to learn. And one of the things that we do off the top with what's called student enrollment is that we recite answers from the student enrollment. And one of the things that we learn and we know is that the original man is called the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. Why am I saying that? If that is true, and I believe it is, which is why it is my confession, the planet is ours. The globe, black man and black woman, was always ours. There is no space and no place on the planet that we are not, number one, original to. The Columbuses of the world and the others who enjoy, quote unquote, discovering parts of the planet, it's new to them because they're the Johnny-come-latelys of the planet Earth. They are the ones that have only been here for approximately 6,000, and even scientists today are even confirming that because we studied that in the Honorable Elisha's book to us, The Message of the Black Man, that the white man has only been on the planet for about 6,000 years. And so even when the scripture is talking about the 6 days, it's in reference, it's within the context of that. But I was reading a scientific journal the other day, and in fact, I could probably pull it up if need be, where they're even confirming the fact that Europeans or white-skinned people, and there's some other specific labels, but at the end of the day, the white man has only been on the planet technically for about 6,600 years. Well, anyway, if we are truly the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe, the world is ours. So that makes the planet our business. And so I will not be limited by these invisible barriers. I mean, these barriers that we say, these between the United States, between Haiti, between the Caribbean, between Russia, between Antarctica, for crying out loud, okay? Certainly Africa and the 54 nations that makes up that continent. We will not be, you're not going to limit me to that because it's ours. That's number one. In terms of Haiti, in particular, and Venezuela, let's be very, very clear. We don't have to. I know that when the news comes on and international news, it's all of this stuff seems to be overhead. That is the way white stream media, corporate media wants us to be overwhelmed so that we will tune out and focus on what's going on with Cardi B and R. Kelly only, instead of engaging in what they're saying. And so I listen to stuff when I don't even understand it. I continue to listen, and then all of a sudden certain things start to make sense. And so then I add a little reading on top of it. And I add a little YouTube listening on top to it. Of course, that's more recently, of course. But, you know, you add to the learning to make sense of what's happening around you. And I'm going to say this before I comment on Venezuela and Haiti in particular. I want to use as an example the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was traversing parts of the globe, and Minister Farrakhan, who's been on at least 3 world tours. I don't know how many nations he's been to total. I forget the total, one of the numbers, excuse me, my sinuses. But understanding our interconnection with the globe. So that's been the norm, number one, for the nation. Number two, Dr. King. Dr. King got into a lot of heat with his own support system among Black people when he began to call out what was taking place in Vietnam. When he went global. Why did he go global? Was it because he was no longer concerned what was happening in the South, what was happening in the North, what was happening with Jim Crow, what was happening with Black folk here in America? No, it's just that he enlarged his vision and he understood that there was an interconnection between the oppression in both places. How? Dr. King understood that, number one, who were the soldiers that were being disproportionately shipped off to be murdered to fight their own other melanated brothers and sisters across the water? Who? Black people. We disproportionately are enrolled in the military. They don't have a problem sending us to go die and to fight their wars. That's number one. So when Dr. King started to talk about Vietnam, where did he also connect the dots? With economics, right? The reason why you all aren't paying, you're not able to take care of issues here in America, the economic issues that are related to poverty amongst Black people in particular, of course, poor whites as well, but specifically Black people, is because you are spending all this money to fight these unjust wars, to oppress the darker peoples of the world. So he understood the interconnection with what? Black life and economics. And of course, the injustice. So I just wanted to throw that out there to sort of set a frame as to why also it matters. Now, as it relates to Venezuela and Haiti, and just FYI, I'm doing more research as well. But we know that Maduro was always sort of the wingman before he took the presidency. That's number one. He was always the one that was meant to be. He was very loyal. And so necessarily he's in that place now. There is no country, there is no nation. Okay, forget that. There is no family. There is no fast food restaurant where there is not some tension between 2 people or 2 factions, okay? So natural to any nation, there's going to be differences. There's going to be some contention. There's going to be some fights. The problem is when you have the unseen hand of the most powerful nation on the globe exacerbating and exploiting those differences. Why? So that while they are fighting, she's stealing your resources. She's manipulating your elections. She's dropping drones. She's doing all of these things. Corporate international companies are going in the name of America to these places. And America's history said, well, I don't know what's wrong with those countries. They're just jealous of our democracy. No, they're not, because these things are taking place in the name of America. And when we talk about that they're happening in the name of America, once you know, then you don't get to turn your, pretend that you don't hear and that you don't see the fact that these things are happening in these countries. And then you create the ISIS of the world. You create the El Shababs of the world. You understand what I'm saying? So all of that I'm saying is with Haiti. Do you know, dear sister? And I'm sure you probably know, because I saw a title of yours that came up. I haven't got a chance, in all honesty, I haven't got a chance to see it yet, but I'm going to look at your piece that you did on that. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. But in Haiti, do you know that a recent finding has shown that in the nation of Haiti, they have some of the largest oil reserves in the world? Gold also, the nation of Haiti is thought to have gold deposits worth about 20 billion at least, as well as copper. So in addition to natural gas, this is a more recent finding that they found that Haiti has that. What does Venezuela have? This is about the natural resources. You just mentioned Elliot and him being a killer. And I think today, if I'm not mistaken, I think I was hearing some reports about today is when they're supposed to have this showdown about humanitarian aid on the border that they're supposed to, that Elliot and as an envoy for America is supposed to be forcing the Venezuelans to take. Well, the Venezuelans are taking, my understanding in the last reports that I was reading was they're taking aid from, I think, Russia and another place, but they're rejecting the aid from America. But guess what, sis? Guess what? The United Nations and some of the other goodwill organizations are refusing to join because they are saying that it is political. They're not joining America because they are calling America out, saying that it is not true humanitarian aid. Even the United Nations is refusing to get involved because America has unclean hands in that way. So Maduro, yes, some of the complaints there are true about the problems in that nation, but that does not justify America participating in a coup d'etat. It does not justify America doing what she does best. That is overthrowing governments, using the CIA to do it, using the unseen hand of America to get involved in the world's business and governments. And the only thing America is really good at is her installations, her military installations, and her military bases around the world. Why? Because a good bully knows that that's the only thing a bully that she needs to do. Have guns, have the bigger weapons, so that way you can threaten that nation when they don't do what you want them to do. You can have a foothold there. And so you're exactly right about the border. My understanding is that Maduro is supposedly closing some areas of, some border areas and threatened to close others. But I don't blame him because it is a coup d'etat. It is a government takeover. And Haiti as well, the dying in the streets. Let me say this too. Before even what we're seeing today with Haiti, sadly, the democratically elected president, Aristide, he was a former priest, because there are a lot of, Catholics that are in Haiti. Former Black priest. He became the overwhelming president of Haiti. Guess what happened? Bush 1 went there and literally removed this democratically elected president from Haiti. We know that when Clinton came into office after Bush 1, Clinton helped to restore him back to his positions. That's America. You're no democracy if you have the power to do that. That's a bully. That's a terrorist. Well, when Clinton restored him back to his position, we had an economic understanding before he allowed him to take the position. We also forced the Haitians to accept low tariffs for their rice. That was what was keeping them from being so deep in poverty. But we negotiated that mess, not to mention the corruption of the Clintons and some of their organization and their family members and stuff that's going on there in Haiti as well. But this took place. So when Bush 2 came into office, guess what happened? Bush 2 removed Aristide. One of the reasons that they don't like our dear sister, what's our congresswoman name? Maxine Waters. She was very, very good friends. I'm almost done with this point. She was very, very good friends with our brother Aristide. She was calling out the United States of America in Congress for its bullying, for its terrorism. That's another reason why they don't like her, because she was very close to him and she was a voice in America on behalf of Haiti and what we were doing behind the scenes. This is America. But as of late, it is the natural resources in Venezuela and it is the natural resources in Haiti. And one final point. What's the guy's name? and I'm sorry, I just drew a blank. Can you help me? What's the guy's name who just wrote a book about the Trump administration, and he was all related to Comey.
Oh, you mean last year? Oh, what is his name?
He just wrote. He's just over the last few days. He's been making.
Oh, okay. I don't know then.
Yes, he's been making the rounds with his new book related to Comey, and he ended up, I think, being fired or just stepped down or something like that because, you know, Trump was dogging him out. Anyway, in his book that he just wrote, his name will come to me in a little bit. In his book he's just wrote, because, you know, everybody that's leaving Trump's administration writing books and telling everything that's going on in this wacky regime. Guess what Trump said to him in 2017? Trump said to him, who we should be going to war with is Venezuela because of their oil. And he said, because they are close. Because they are close. So anyway, that's my thoughts on all that. I know that was a whole lot, but anyway.
No, I like the way that you laid that out and making that correlation, because I think that helps to make the point clearer, other than just saying we should care for, you know, because they're Black, or we should care for this and that. Actually framing it, I think, is helpful to a lot of people. We are getting close, you guys, to the time that we're going to take some calls. So if you guys have questions for Vicky, the mods are going to be putting the call-in number in the chat, and we will start taking calls in about 5 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to let Vicky stretch her legs.
Thank
you. And you guys collect the call-in number. I'll set it up, and in 5 minutes, you guys will be able to call in. I am going to go ahead and pause you guys. I'm going to play a little ear candy for you guys.
Just before you do, I just found the name. The book is called The Threat by Andrew McCabe.
The Threat?
Yes, by Andrew McCabe. That's the name. I was the Trump administration guy. Remember Andrew McCabe from the Trump administration? He's the one that just finished his book. But yeah, it's called The Threat by Andrew McCabe. So Andrew G. McCabe, that's the one, you know, that just came from the FBI. He's been making the rounds on The View and all these other shows and the Sunday shows and stuff. The thread is called How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump. So anyway, yeah, Andrew McCabe, that's the one who was fired from his position as deputy director of the FBI. President Donald Trump celebrated on Twitter. Andrew McCabe fired, a great day for hardworking men and women of the FBI, a great day for democracy. So that's when he fired him in March of 2016 of last year. But Andrew McCabe's book has just recently come out. So anyway, that's the name of the Trump administration that I was saying. It was in his book, The Threat, that I was, they were talking about excerpts from it, where he was saying that Trump said in 2017, who we should be going to war with is Venezuela because of their oil.
Which is no surprise, because Trump is a businessman. And I say from a pragmatic standpoint, it makes sense, right? But because there are Black people in these places, Venezuela has a high Black population, Haiti has a high Black population, it becomes a problem then. And so if there's ever a conflict of interest, y'all, we have to err on the side of Blackness, even if it benefits as a country. So
absolutely.
So you guys, we're going to take, we're going to start up on the hour. It's 57 after now. We'll pick it back up on the hour with a call-in line. And then when we come back, Vicky, I want to ask you about the R. Kelly situation. Not so much that I care about him, but it's funny. You and I were on the same wavelength. And I was listening to your show yesterday. And I did a piece this morning because R. Kelly's indictment came 24 hours after it was outed that the crown prince of Britain, or of England, and the president and the Clintons and several other billionaires and multimillionaires.
Oh, pedophilia.
Yes. So within 24 hours of that being outed, all of a sudden,
wow,
for the chopping block. So I want to discuss that with you.
I've got to watch that. I've got to watch your show.
I want to discuss that with you. And then you guys, if you want to call in, you have 2 or 3 minutes to collect the number, get your questions ready for Vicky, and we'll talk to you guys too. So just listen to this while we take a break.
could put it on me that I've given up. America has decadence that could very well sentence.
Title of these airwaves, they belong to the people. And we thank you for consenting to accommodate our format here, after which, after this statement, you'll answer my questions and those of our audience. And why don't you proceed now?
Thank you. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, my dear visitors and friends, and those of you in our television audience, the United States of America, one of the greatest nations in the last 6,000 years, is in grave trouble, not because of the power of a foreign government, but because of an internal rot and decadence that could very well sentence this nation to the ignominy that many of her sister nations have gone to before her. America is in the path. Sodom and Gomorrah, ancient Egypt, Babylon, and Rome. And at the core of this internal problem of America is the unwanted presence of nearly 30 to 40 million black people who didn't come on the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, or the Mayflower, but who came in the holds of ships. And from the day that our fathers set the soles of their feet in the Western Hemisphere, our cry has been for justice, and our cry is for justice today. I am not before you to anger you, to upset you. I am before you as an instrument, I hope, of peace, and I hope of reason. As a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I want you to know that I'm not an enemy of America, nor am I an enemy of Jews or white people, and certainly I'm not an enemy of black people. But I hope you will understand before this is over that I am pro-truth, pro-justice, and I hope for the liberation of our people and the salvation of this nation. Thank you very much.
Well, now, isn't that's a hallmark card of an opening statement, if I'm...
He's so condescending, y'all. He's so condescending. I cannot. I will share that with you guys. You know, I put up free content on my Patreon for those people who cannot afford to participate in the Patreon, which is essentially, it works as a give back to the community. So we're trying to get it to a point where we can support, let's say, a Black family, support some causes, donate, for example, to Black First, Land First, anything like that. Can I turn my camera? Anything like that. But I put free content up there too. So if you go to my Patreon, you don't have to pay anything to enjoy or benefit from the content. And this, I will put it up there. I have several historical archival things that are up where our people are speaking unapologetically on behalf of our community. And I think it helps for us to hear what those conversations look like when we're having them with non-Black people, because we have been taught to be heavily politically correct, heavily protective of white imperialism and the establishment. And when we hear this period of time, which brought on the crack epidemic, yes. Which brought on mass incarceration, expanded it, because we know that slavery never ended. I did that piece to show you guys how they just reformed slavery. They did not end slavery. And we know that that has been expanded. And that expansion, the pumping of drugs into our community, was because Black people were going on national TV and speaking openly and unapologetically about their willingness to protect ourselves and to come up from under white oppression. So if you like that little clip, I will be putting the full audio and visual up, and you can engage that content for free, as well as other free content on my Patreon. So there's nothing that has to be paid. You can just go up there, and if you're interested in using that for homeschooling, teaching purposes, learning purposes, entertainment, if you're going to watch or listen to something, it's probably best to watch or listen to something that's going to be edifying to you. It sparks something. We listened to the leader of Black First, Land First on my video correlating South Africa and Cuba, and the love that Nelson Mandela had for Fidel, the leader of Black First, Land First. Oh,
sorry, that was
okay.
on my phone.
And the love that Fidel Castro had for Nelson Mandela and vice versa. And, you know, in his speech, which was an aggressive speech in response to Black people's lives being threatened with a private militia, among other things that really freaked out the non-Blacks that listened to that speech, he said something that should resonate with us, which is that we must kill the white man in our head, and then we will not be afraid. So it's good for us to hear Black people speaking unapologetically on behalf of the community. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue my conversation with Vicky, but I'm also opening up the phone lines. I know the mods have been putting the number in the chat, so you are welcome to call in as we're talking, and we can take a break to address any questions that you have for Vicky or anything that you want to add to the conversation. Let me make sure the mods are, yes. Thank you, Vonda. I really appreciate that. So Vonda Harris has thrown the number into the chat, and you guys can take that number, and as you will, feel free to call in or just feel free to enjoy the content. So Vicky, I wanted to get back to what I was speaking to you about regarding R. Kelly and that major pedophile ring that includes royalty, where they gave everybody immunity that was involved. And our current labor secretary was the man that facilitated that deal with the pedophile's lawyer. And he is in charge of human trafficking. That's part of his job as labor secretary. So there's obviously a conflict of interest. I wanted you to back up and talk about what you were speaking about on your show yesterday about how there is an unbalanced level of accountability in a deflection that they use to protect their own and to drag ours. Can you just expound on that a little bit more? And for those of you that didn't see it, I will be linking that on the playback at the end of this video, so you can just click and go watch Vicky's video on the topic.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that link. Yes, ma'am. Well, of course, I had a few, you know, folk that are wondering, well, are you caping for R. Kelly? You know, are you, you know, endorsing this type of behavior? You know, are you, you know, that kind of stuff? Let me tell you, I get that some people may genuinely be asking that question, but there are others that are not. And for those that are not, that are misconstruing my position, they're doing so either because they're a liar or they're being willfully slow. And what I mean is, take your time to listen to the full context of what I'm saying. And the long and short of it is, I specifically never mentioned whether or not, you know, how much time he should be doing in prison and what the punishment ought to be. I did not specifically get into that. But what I did call for was what? Accountability. I called for accountability. I also made it clear that in this system of white supremacy, it's we're so inextricably connected to so many areas of it that necessarily, you know, one could expect, you know, that we're going to have some brushes with the law, but that we needed to begin to quote unquote get out. We needed to begin to start making some changes to remove ourselves from a system that our open oppressor invented and is still in charge of, and the effects of which are not good for us. Is ending in murder and bloodshed and so forth. And that is when I went specifically into the example that some of the members of the Nation of Islam engaged in self-policing, the dope busters, things that we can do now. The group, the 10,000 Fearless that Minister Farrakhan has called for, that are not just folk that are quote unquote registered members of the Nation of Islam, but folk that are good-hearted and that have a desire to be trained and a desire to make our homes and neighborhoods decent and safe places to live. Well, amongst that group is also individuals that are able to do conflict resolution. Let me say something to you. I'll say this, and I'm gonna connect some points here, a principle, even though I'm talking about this related to the R. Kelly stuff. But I want to first make this overarching point. I saw your piece that you did, I guess the other day. I forget which day it was. But anyway, I saw your piece where you were giving your opinion on Yvette Carnell's ADOS piece related to that. And you were just saying that even though you both had access to the same information, basically you were saying you both had just different, yeah, I guess different opinions about it or something along those lines. Well, one of the issues I saw with that, and of course, shout out to the ADOS movement, and I support much of what they're doing. I feel like that it's a title, it's a hashtag, it's a principle, it's a ideology that we can rally around that's certainly gaining momentum. But I also know that it's something too that the Nation of Islam has been on the front lines of doing for almost 90 years, but that's another point. And also the gentleman that you mentioned before. But again, shout out, I believe this time has come for this movement. But one of the problems I saw in that interview, and this is about critical analysis, this isn't about dogging one particular person, so I want to be clear. But one of the things that I saw that was problematic about that is that we too often treat the white man as if they are God. This is the problem. I can't do, we can't do, this must be this, you believe they're not going to do. The white man is not God. This is the reason we need to be educated on who the real God is, who we are, and who the real devil is. Because when we become acquainted with our own powers, when we become acquainted with the truth of those things and those people, we will begin, Jason Bourne, when we're healed of our amnesia, we will begin then to be intentional about who we are and realize all that we're meant to be and start to put pressure and then begin to experience manifestations that have always been ours. So I first want to say that. And if the white man is not God, then who is he? Which I won't go, I won't go there today. But more importantly, who are we? With the R. Kelly situation, R. Kelly, if he is indeed guilty of those allegations, those charges, he is not guilty alone. My point in the show yesterday was to say, to prove, to remind us that he is a product of America, made in America. Just like you see a label on a t-shirt, label on some jeans or whatnot, label on some shoes, made in America. You can put that on the modern Negro. Made in America, brand that. Instead of, repping Gucci and all this, rep that. You rep that really well. Made in America. Because of the history of sexual deviancy, the history of sexual perversion, the history of sodomy, the history of rape, the proliferation of homosexuality, and these other things that were foreign and mostly unusual to Black people. This is just plain facts. And one of the things that I give as an example is this book, Understanding the Assault on the Black Man, Black Manhood, and Black Masculinity by Dr. Wesley Muhammad. By the way, they can get that at NOI.org. In the book, and yesterday on the show, I won't go there today, but they can look at the show. You said you put the link there. They'll see where I'm giving you specific instances of this global project, a global European project where they utilized not only heterosexual, but homosexual sexual deviancy as a practice It was central to the colonizer. It was central to our oppression here in America. And it's been done for hundreds of years. So it is a climate, it is an environment. They not only, we know, raped us, our mothers and our sisters, our aunties, but they also sodomized our fathers and our brothers and our nephews. There was a process of buck breaking. We are taught, when folks hear me say hashtag 464, we have been in forms of oppression for over 400 years, and I use the number 464 years. I'm not utilizing the 1619 number. I'm using the 1515 number that we're taught even in the nation, which can be verified through evidence in the Congressional Museum in Washington, D.C. as well. But we are taught the 1515 number, which makes that about a 64-year difference. Haven't you heard the phrase, the $64,000 question or something along those lines? Well, you can say that that's born out of those 64 years, because that 64 years was the strategic years that the white man made the black man, who's the black God, into a nigger. That was the process of buck breaking. That was the processing of making him into a slave, much of which we know was done, of course, in much of the Caribbean and those areas as well. With that being said, it is an environment of sexual deviancy that we were bred in and we were taught and learned. A part of that process also was not only sodomizing the black man, not only raping our mothers and so forth, not only taking babies prematurely out of the wombs of the black woman, binding her, taking the baby out, and then crushing the head of that unborn black child with the heel of the slave master. This sick devil did all manner of evil against us sexually, but guess what else they did? They would sometimes make the black woman, the black mother, sleep with her own black son. I did a show briefly talking about that's where you get the term, I don't want to use it, but MFer. You understand? It has its connections with that. Sometimes they would blindfold the participants so that they wouldn't know who they were sleeping with, not knowing that they were actually sleeping with their sister or sleeping with their mother. Why were they doing that? Because the numbers were getting low in terms of importing slaves. So it was the goal to hurry up, get more black bodies for the plantation. So by any means necessary. With that being said, you cannot be formed in the American, let's call it, womb. If a mother smokes crack the whole 9 months of her pregnancy, dear sister, we think it not strange if the child comes out mentally ill or dead. Is that right? Or sick in some other way. Because she was formed in an affected, a sick womb. That is my point with the R. Kelly. It was not about it was not about excusing him or not holding him accountable. It was about saying this was made in America and we are going to hold the devil that made him and others. But our numbers still pale in comparison to the pedophiles, to the rapists in the Catholic Church. It pales in comparison to the ring that you just mentioned with governmental leaders, politicians, and influencers. It still pales in comparison to these deviants that we see throughout media. It pales in comparisons to the heads of, for example, the International Monetary Fund. I always talk about Strauss-Kahn. He was prepped to be France's president before he had to step down. And it was found that, of course, it was a few years ago where he made this African maid perform oral sex on him, literally grabbing her head, literally physically forcing her to do that. And this sister did not do what too many Beckys do, that say, well, I didn't report it because I was afraid to lose my job. I didn't report it. He looked at me wrong, or he complimented me too strong, and I chose not to report it to HR because I was afraid that my job. No, she reported it. And guess what happened? They arrested him when he was on the tarmac, but lo and behold, he had some connections with the DA department, and they all of a sudden dropped the charges, claimed that they looked in her immigration papers and said there were some inconsistencies there. So the criminal charges they vanished. She ended up, though, ultimately suing him civilly and won a few $1 million. But the point is, in every area of human activity, media, in the military, in the church, religion, in government, in economics, Wall Street, all these areas, you find that there is a proliferation of sexual deviancy. The President of the United States, who admitted on record that he comes upon a woman like a bitch, his words, not mine, grabs her by the P-U-S-S-Y. We don't need to listen. Forget his accusers. We'll take your word for it. Then his first wife, in a legal deposition under oath, said he raped her. And later, she slightly backtracked a bit under pressure. But your first wife, under oath, said that. But he's promoted to the President of the United States, made in America. So I'm just saying that just like a child that is born from a mother, from the womb of a mother that has smoked dope the entire time of the pregnancy, you don't beat up on the child, or you recognize the fact that this was the mother's doing, right? You recognize that this was formed by something greater. At the same time, we're still holding him accountable. And I'm saying that we need to trust our own intelligence and our own ability to bring accountability to our own people. We need to start to do that, because going to our open oppressor who created these conditions in the first place is not working. It is not working. And we can best heal our own selves. And this is the big difference between all of those sexual white deviants that I just mentioned, and R. Kelly and others like him. 464. They don't have that history. It is not an excuse, but it is certainly a truth and a reality to the fruit. He is a fruit. He's not the root. He's the fruit. And I'm just saying that we need to deal with the root. We recognize the overarching scheme that's happening. And I'll say this too. You have an overwhelming number of these men that I just mentioned, these sexual deviants and predators and all this stuff. But we're seeing documentaries. Dateline just the other day did a documentary on blind, 80-year-old, and imprisoned Bill Cosby. Another one just did a documentary on what? Michael Jackson, who is deceased and who actually went to court. Then, of course, the back-to-back nonstop R. Kelly stuff. I am saying that warfare has been declared on the black man and the black woman in America, and the theater of war, the battlefield, as it were, is vast, and it includes arts and entertainment. It includes the media. It includes Hollywood. It includes the images. It includes the news. It includes all of those things. And so for them to do what I'm calling a hit job by an imprisoned old man, a deceased man, and then, of course, R. Kelly, it's not by accident is what I'm saying. They're trying to scapegoat the black man and make them the face. They want to emboss this image of the black man as the sexual deviant in our minds, when it is in fact our 400-plus-year-old oppressor. And I'm pointing that out, and I'm saying that you're not going to get away with it. And I'm saying that that is the big darn deal. If you made these sexual predators in our community, you helped to create these sexual predators in our community. And it's okay to point that out. And I do not apologize for doing it. And it's unfortunate that I have been hearing stories of people that are intentionally mischaracterizing what I was saying. I endeavor to be a righteous woman, so I want justice on all sides. I want him to be held accountable. But I'm not talking about accountability the way our 400-year-old oppressor is used to doing it. I'm saying that there needs to be a new order, a new way of doing things, because it's not working, taking our cues from our former slave masters and their children.
All right. Oh, it looks like we have a call. Hold on. Let me see who it is.
Sure.
Okay, she can hear you now. She couldn't hear you before. I'm sorry. I've been screening calls. I've gotten a couple, but I didn't let them come through. Go ahead, Toriana, with your question.
I was wondering what direction that you're going to take with the FLyNubianQueen that you're at the head of it.
I can hardly hear him. I'm sorry.
He said he was wondering what direction you were going to take your show on FLyNubianQueen. Like, did you have a blueprint for that?
Not so much. I plan on keep doing what I'm doing, and that is continue to do shows and news coverage Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, the content, the subject matter would change. Of course, it does depend on what's going on in the world, but also because I'm still fairly new there, I'm building my audience. So my goal first, I would say it's the first thing is to build my tribe, as it were. And once I get a greater feeling for my tribe, I will likely expand some of the topics and introduce more and more some of the other things that are on my heart and on my mind, and things that I think are important for our people to know and for us to talk about. But it will always be my goal to, number one, inform and inspire. And it will always be Black men and Black women in particular, always first and foremost, my target. And by extension, other people, of course, I want them to enjoy and to participate as well. But the target is the Black men and the Black women, in particular, of course, Black women, because it's FLyNubianQueen. And my subjects are typically going to be about certain political issues, as I mentioned before, certain current affairs issues, as well as certain spiritual issues. So that's what I see myself doing right now. I'm building my tribe presently, and then little bit by little bit, we'll introduce some of these other things. My goal also is I'll probably do a few more interviews. I've done several other interviews on our FLyNubian network channel on Facebook. Facebook, we have over 400,000 followers there. And if you go to Facebook, that's FLyNubianQueen.com. We have the website FLyNubianQueen.com, so subscribe there. But then also go to Facebook and follow us there at FLyNubianQueen.com. That's the handle there. And there I've done several interviews with very powerful individuals from the Nation of Islam, as well as others. Chiquizia Clemens, our dear sister, who was the assault victim concerning this Waffle House fiasco out of Alabama, I had interviewed her before on Facebook before. So yesterday I was supposed to interview her, but as I mentioned to the audience before, there was a change in her case, and there are parts that she asked me not to disclose, which I won't, but just keep her in prayer. And so unfortunately, literally right before I was supposed to come on air to interview her, we had to change the show, and that's when I did the R. Kelly piece. So that's what I plan on doing. Maybe a few more interviews. By the way, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, I'm going to be getting a date in the near future with him. That's the author of the book, Understanding the Assault on the Black Man, Black Manhood. I can't wait to interview him again soon as well. So it'll be some of that too.
Did you have any other questions, Toriana?
Yes, I did. I have one more.
Okay.
One more question. About the way you don't earlier, I suppose CPS for being I suppose CPS for being child trafficking ring. I cover child trafficking ring. I'm trying to get the word out about that. I don't know if you've heard about that. The government is trafficking children themselves through CPS. Have you ever heard anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I'll have to look into it. But I did do the editing on a book, and I know many people who are in foster care, and all of them were sexually abused and molested. So I do believe that they peddle in child flesh. I haven't heard about it from that angle, but I will definitely look into that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
and it shaped
her. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I will totally look into that. Thanks for calling in, Toriana. Bye-bye. Okay, you guys, we're about to wrap up because I'm holding Vicky hostage now. But
no worries. I'm having fun. Thank you.
I do want to ask you just about one more thing.
Oh, sure.
Thoughts on it. Are you familiar with Crystal Kaiser?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so Crystal Kaiser is a young woman who was being paid to have sex with an adult white man for about 2 years, I think from the age of 15 until she turned 16 or 17.
Is she presently in prison now, the young lady, and they had her in that gear?
Yeah, they had her in like the padded thing.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
So it's interesting, just hearkening back to how they're using R. Kelly to deflect from a lot of the stuff that's going on in their community. That the man who was essentially given a slap on the wrist for bringing children to his home at least 3 times a day for royalty, for state officials, for all of these people who got immunity from prosecution, which means he was facilitating the rape and engaging in the rape of dozens upon dozens of children over several countries, and the FBI has admitted this. He was engaging in the same thing. He would have somebody find a child and pay them for sex, and these women are being viewed as victims. Now, in the case of Crystal Kaiser, she fought back and she did kill the man, and she burned his house down, and he will never hurt another child thanks to her. Yes. But she's not being treated as a victim, although the circumstances of her rape were similar to those of the circumstances of the children that were raped by this man and the people that he was supplying children to. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the double standard that is being held.
Well, dear sister, we know that patriarchy, particularly the most affected and dangerous one, certainly modeled by the white man. And we see that our families, of course, that would include us, that would include our men and our children, have learned and seen that play out, especially here in the wilderness of North America, that is to say, the United States of America. And unfortunately, which is what I was saying on my show yesterday, that we're starting to take on, not just starting, we're taking on the nature, the identity, the image and likeness of our open oppressors. And we're seeing that affected type of patriarchy in some areas of Black life. And I think that because so much of our attention and because power has been concentrated in the hands of the male for so long, particularly, of course, white men, because they control the media, they control these high places, as the scriptures call them, the high places of the powerful places, then necessarily they've made themselves the center. They've made themselves the most important. And so the double standard, I think, is clear why it exists, because who controls the media, who controls radio, who controls some of even the platforms that we're on and so forth. So this is why the double standard is there, and they pick and choose whose story we're going to cover and who's who they won't. But honestly, we know what Malcolm X said about the Black woman in particular. We know that his teacher is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and this is where he got this understanding from, and that is this, that the Black woman is the most disrespected, the most unprotected, the most neglected person on the planet Earth. And unfortunately, we're seeing that with our dear sisters and others like her. I am appreciative of the fact that you even mentioned her name, because her name is not getting the attention that it needs to, that it deserves. But this is also the beauty of the rise of, as what I've been hearing some of our brothers and sisters out there saying, of the new Black media, where we get to control the narrative and we get to highlight stories that are important. And it will indeed take time, because our people have been denatured. We're not acting like ourselves. And how can you act like yourselves when you have been under such conditions for hundreds of years? But we're going, by us coming into the knowledge of what's right and righteous and who we've always been meant to be, by us taking advantage of some of these platforms, even with all of their many issues, but us still trying to parlay these platforms so that we're able to reach our people with good content. We believe bit by bit that we will help to turn the tide and cause our dear sister, and remind me of her name again, say her name again for us, please.
It's Crystal Kaiser.
Crystal Kaiser, to make her name, to say her name, to hashtag her name, and not only her name and others like us. For example, Chiquizia Clemens. That's one of the reasons I wanted to stay on the story. That's one of the reasons why even months and months and months later, I was going to interview her. And while I'm in a different state, and while I might be dealing with the illness that restricts me to, you know, my home, or I'm always with, for example, around my mother because she has the necessary medical stuff that I need as well, and I'm not able to go out and about like I need to, I can, you know, reach my people in the world from a laptop that was given to me, you know, or my cell phone. I want to use such as I have, which is whether it's my voice or me growing, because I'm still new to this. I want to be able to use that to highlight these stories. But I do want to say this as well. And I'm not just here to just give unnecessary plugs to the Nation of Islam. I'm here just to tell the truth and the reality. You know, there's a, you know, we say that the revolution won't be televised, but the Nation of Islam has the Final Call newspaper that has been around for 40 years. Before that, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had a newspaper from the 30s, the 1930s. And the Nation is always covering, highlighting with their paper internationally stories of Black women, and demanding, making sure that they use their print organ, their newspaper, to be a voice for Black women. Not to mention, of course, the Minister Louis Farrakhan's, representative, his spokesperson, rather. Minister Farrakhan's spokesperson is attorney Dr. Ava Muhammad, and she has been for many decades. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, sis. What you're doing will begin to turn the tide of that by remembering her name. Me using my platform, as I mentioned before, the Chiquizia Clemens. When I'm on Instagram, what do I put in my Insta stories? You know, what are some of the things we're posting? What are we talking about? Whose pages are we going on? These are the things, however we get things into our consciousness. I want us to know that we have the power to begin to control the narrative. And so when we hear one thing, we can change the subject. We can give facts, we can give receipts. You know, we can change the conversation and make it important so that those double standards won't be so marked. So that's that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I actually did a piece that for some reason it was upsetting to some people, but it was called The Invisible Black Woman. And I talked about how Black women, there have been studies done to show that we are overlooked socially, and we are overlooked with regard to criminality and violence against us. And so I think this is a case, and I noticed the women that they're putting forth, even though this man was known for being in the Caribbean islands and places that have a high Black concentration, raping children, the only women that they're showing are white women.
Come on.
And they're being treated like victims. But I'm watching a young girl literally be taken to the slaughter when this man was a known pedophile, was being investigated, and his accounts had been frozen by his own bank because they thought he was trafficking children. He was making child pornography and all this. And they cry out for justice that this monster is dead. And I just think that is shocking. So I completely agree. We also have a caller. It's our last caller. It's Gab. Gab from Gab Talk Radio, and he actually, I would love to see you guys do a collaboration because he does a lot of interviews across the board with different Black influencers in social media and things like that. And he's whether they be controversial or not, he does those interviews, and it gives us an opportunity to look with a loving eye toward our own people who are doing the work. But Gab called in. Gab, sorry to have you waiting so long.
That's awesome.
Can you hear him, Vicky?
No, I can't. I can't really hear him.
Oh no.
I can hear him, but I can't make out what he's saying.
Oh, you can't hear what he's saying? Hold on, let me make sure the chat can hear you. Otherwise, I can change something so that you can be heard. Can you guys in the chat? Hear Gab? Can I get a yes or a 1 if you can hear Gab? Can I get a yes or a 1 in the chat if you can hear Gab, you guys?
Checked out.
They are saying yes. Oh, they can hear you, but Vicky can't. Okay, but that's okay. Vicky, I'm going to make it so you can hear him too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You are welcome. So we all should be able to hear you in about 2 seconds, Gab. Sorry about that. Thank you guys for bearing with me. You know that I'm just getting the call-in thing worked out. I've had technical difficulties. Oh, have you been watching me thud out like each and every time? I get like the first call and then I have problems after that. I don't know what goes on. Okay, so let's see. Gab, go ahead and talk.
I gave up.
Oh, that's Vicky, better. That's better.
Okay, great. Okay, here we go.
Okay. So, all right. Oh, I hear echo, but so I want to thank you, Irene, for opening up your phone so that we could kind of get personal with Vicky real quick. I want to acknowledge Vicky as one of the people on FLyNubianQueen that I watch pretty often, and I appreciate it. I think right now it's probably a pretty dumb question to even ask if you're part of the Nation of Islam. I know the language well, so I want to acknowledge her for that, for being there and promoting Dr. Wesley's book and interview. That's a great interview. But sister, I just really wanted to acknowledge you for your energy and let you know that I see that what you're doing is something that you're probably born to do. You know what I'm saying? You embrace it and you put the right amount of energy into the atmosphere and the kind that I believe we need and that we benefit from. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And really my only question was if you are an active member of the Nation of Islam, and peace and greetings if I didn't already, Salaam alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Member of the Nation of Islam, and if so, how long? And if you were a minister in there, or are you even seeking the ministry of the Nation of Islam?
Great. First of all, yes, sir. Well, first of all, walaikum salam. Thank you so much for your kind words, and to piggyback off of what you're saying. Yes, I do feel that what I do on FLyNubianQueen, it feels like destiny. Can you hear me? Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Gab. You can't hear us?
What happened?
No, Gab, we can hear you.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I don't think he can. Oh no, he hung up. Keep talking. He's watching.
Oh, okay. Well, to answer his question, yes, I do feel like it's destiny, and it was what I was born to do on FLyNubianQueen. So that's so precious that he said that. And it's such an awesome thing. Again, I said, because I'm restricted medically, and to be able to do this just with a laptop and my phone, it just gives me extreme joy. But yes, I am an official registered member of the Nation of Islam. It's been over just about a year now, so I'm brand spanking new. And no, I'm not a minister. And I am active, unfortunately, because I'm medically limited and I don't get to leave often from my space and place. Again, like I said, unless I'm with my mom and stuff all the time, but when I'm with her, she has my medical stuff that I need. And then of course I get on to, my own official residence. Unfortunate because I'm not able to go out and about now. I'm on new medicines is the long and short of it. So I'm restricted. So to go out there, but I have my resources and I have tune in regularly each week for the teachings at NOI.org for the webcast. And I'm in direct connection with our study group here, study group number 51, that's headed by Brother Herman Muhammad, who I'm in direct connection with, that provides me with papers and other resources and things of that nature. So as soon as I'm clear to do some more and more movement where I don't have to have certain things that I need there, and then in terms of my physical attendance, that's a different, that would increase even more. But yes, I am active and definitely active. And again, I'm brand spanking new, as you can tell, but I'm a student right now to answer his question. So.
Okay, that was crazy, you guys. Why did I figured out how to do everything. I got y'all to hear him. I got Vicky to hear him. I could hear him, but then he couldn't hear us. I promise you guys, I'm going to work this life out.
That's all right.
We're just going to keep on trying. But I want to thank you, Vicky, for coming through. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us here.
Thank you.
As I said, I'll be linking a couple of videos that I personally enjoyed from Vicky's show with FLyNubianQueen. Vicky, you are on 3 o'clock Pacific time, 5 days a week, right?
Yeah. You said 3 o'clock, so it would be what? 3? You said Pacific, 6:30. So that must be 3:30.
Oh, 3:30. Okay.
Right, because it's 6:30 Eastern.
Okay, so she's on FLyNubianQueen, 6:30 Eastern time, 3:30 Pacific, Monday through Friday. And then sometimes you come on, I saw like in the morning, like you come on at random times too. You do like pop-ups, I noticed.
Every night, like when there was breaking news with the R. Kelly stuff, I did come on live just really quick. I did come on live, and so that's true. And sometimes they may upload some of my other content and so forth. But yes, ma'am, that's typically when I'm on, sister. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming out today and allowing me to interview you. It was really an honor for me. I enjoyed it so much. And you just dropped so much knowledge. For those of you who weren't able to be here for the entire interview, feel free to listen to it on the playback. And like I said, I will be picking a couple of the shows that I really enjoyed that Vicky did. I will be linking them at the end of this live, so you can just click the link and you can go there. I'll also be sure to link in the description box and in the comment section her page here on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to her page here on YouTube and tune in. And then also you're able to reach her directly on her website. Vicky, what was your website again?
It's onpurposewithvicky.com. Onpurposewithvicky, VICKI.com.
Mods, if you can drop that in the chat, please, I would appreciate it. onpurposewithvicky.com.
That's right.
It's Vicky KI for if you don't know.
Right. Yes. VICKI.
Okay, great. All right. Well, with that said, you guys, I want to thank
you.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I want to thank you so much, Miss Irene. You are beautiful inside and out. I told you before when we were able to talk that I first heard of you. It was some panel. And like I told you, I'm sorry, I can't even remember the name of the panel, but I know I was listening to a panel. You were on it. It was several other people that were on it. And I want to say it was one of Nyla Says panels. It was like 2 or 3 months ago, and you were on there and you were saying something, and then y'all were moving to some other subject, and you were so soft-spoken, but it was the intelligence and the power and the position that you were coming from that where you stood out. And then that's when I came across your YouTube page. And so I've been able to see a couple of your shows, and I'm looking forward to seeing even more. So and I'm just like, this woman is not only just stunning physically, but just your spirit. And thank you for the different subjects, and thank you for the integrity of some of the subjects that you discussed as well. So I want to just thank you so much, and it's an honor to be with you and your audience and your chat. So shout out to them, and even those that you were on the panel with before, shout out to them for robust Black conversation.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Thank you so much. And I always say, and I think it's so important that we remember, like, we are traveling this path together. So I'm learning so much from you when you talk, and, you know, I'm trying to do my part. We all have to find where we fit in this puzzle to promote and do what we can, even if that is just choosing to not tweet something that is not progressive to the community, but, you know, tweet, you know, free Crystal Kaiser, tweet hands off Haiti. You know, when you're doing your posts, speak about those things. We can all do something, and together, the individual threads that we make weave a fabric for this community. And so thank you so much, Vicki. And bye, y'all. I'll see you guys later.